Hey, Michelle is back on this Sunday, and I wanted to give you a quick little story about something happened a few years ago. Sunday, it's still Sunday. I think it's the 21st. So let me, no, it's Sunday the 23rd. Sunday the 23rd, 2024. So I wanted to tell you something about how powerful things can be going on inside your thoughts that do not relate at all to your reality. Okay? And that's why it's so important to align your thoughts with your reality. So, a long time ago, I used to work in this environment. It was a stressful environment. You know what I mean? It was this constant chaos going on, and we would take, it was a whole group of us. Have mercy, have mercy. And I don't do well indoors around a lot of people. I mean, I can manage, but I just don't like certain, especially with this type of environment that was going on. It was a very hostile environment, and and it was causing a lot of stress in my life because it was a lot of jealousy and envy, floating around. That energy. Once that energy comes into the building, it's hard to get it out, honey. Sometimes you have to remove yourself from that energy, because that energy just just doesn't leave certain places. So that's why we have a lot of encasement of negativity in certain environments, and a lot of people may not understand how our energy is fluid. We have some fluid into our energy. Just see if you can see that visually. Energy has some fluid within it that can be affixed to certain objects. Okay, so that's why a lot of people sage a new place that they go in to clear out what they call negative energy. And I told you can have just as much turmoil and imbalance with too much positivity and just as well as with negativity. I know some people are just overly positive, and that can cause self-harm. But one day, while working in this particular toxic environment, something happened. Ooh, and when it happened, it was like cold. We used to call it cold red. So people that worked in certain fields know what that means when you say cold red. that means there's an emergency. Okay, there's an emergency, and as a matter of fact, I'll just say it. I was in an emergency environment. Okay, so that meant okay. Now the thing about this emergency environment is how sounds can go out, meaning people can pick up stuff going on in the background, which is smart to do. Say for example, I'm talking on a radio or a walkie-talkie or even a cell phone. Okay, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of people can pick up what's happening in your background, when they have to go in and investigate things. So in this particular background, that's what was going on. There was an emergency situation, a high-level code red. Everybody gets on their P's and Q's, as they say. Everybody, it's serious. We need to respond accordingly. There's an emergency situation that could affect the safety of others. So when this all happened, when this all was happening, again, I pictured that there was a lot of chaos and yelling and screaming and blah blah blah. Okay, that's what I perceived that what was happening. Okay, but it's so funny when investigators came in to investigate what was really going on. What did we really experience during that moment? Because the emergency wasn't in the building where we were. It was outside. It was out, it related to public safety. So I remember, and so it was chaotic for the rest of the night, because I used to work middle shift, and the chaos lasted all night until the one that supposedly was responsible for causing all of this supposedly was apprehended or whatever. All right. So quote unquote, the danger was over for the public. And I'm going to talk about that at a later date as well, about our perception of what is safety and what it means to have public safety. So anyway, so once an investigation started, where, you know, investigators came in and took up all of our electronic audios about what I was hearing, what was being said, and blah 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 from all of us, because all of us were involved. And I think, you know, for some reason, I think I was where I was being more kind of, you know, information was coming into me, you know, via this person, via this phone call. So I was kind of like in the middle of it all. And so it was so strange too, because when I left that position, you know, and to go home, it was like things were just playing over and over and over. This is before I started incorporating more of my meditation. During this period of my life, I stopped meditating per se, but you're always meditating. But there was just a lot going on in that time of my life where I thought, you know, where my life was in danger. I had some life-threatening events happening. And so on top of that, you know, my thoughts are all over the place. So anyway, so the point is, when they played my audio back, okay, because first they interviewed me and I was telling them, you know, somebody was screaming here, somebody was screaming there, trying to get information into me. People were yelling across the room. I was just telling them how I was responding to this code red emergency that was happening in the city. And then the investigator came back, which I thought was kind of funny. You know, they pull you into a room, you know, they ask you what happened and blah, 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 blah. And it's so funny too, because it stressed me out, because it was so major. And like I said, it was a public safety issue. And so when the investigators came back, you know, this was after months of investigation, they caught the person, months of investigation, they put in their defense together, or they put in their prosecution together, whatever they were doing. And so one of the investigators, I thought it was 3 people, but they were interviewing me per se and asking me about what was going on, right? And so that's why it's so important to have other evidence of what actually happens. Okay, do not just rely on what someone's saying to you. What's the proof? What's the evidence? Okay, so they said to me, now let's refresh, Michelle, about what happened that day. And, you know, I refreshed about what happened. I told them it was total chaos. There was a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming. People were, you know, I was just, I'm sorry. You know, all of this and that was happening. So this investigator had all of my audio from that event, because everything's recorded. You know, when there's a code red like that, an emergency, everything's recorded. Background noise, what I'm saying, what other people are saying. And so the investigator came to me and he said, okay, so all of this was happening and this? I said, yes, this is what I remember. And so he played back the audio. And I was calm. And there was nothing much heard in the background. Okay, and the investigator said, and I thought to myself, well, maybe he has the wrong date, because this is what I remember, is what I was saying to him. He says, because he says you were extremely calm under all that pressure. He says, I don't remember hearing no one yelling to you. I don't remember this. You know, he says all these things that you put down that were happening did not happen. Okay, so that's a problem. Okay, that's a problem. So my point is this. We have to manage our thoughts and make sure we are grounded in reality about what's really happening in our reality. What I was doing was just creating chaos myself in my own thoughts. Okay, but luckily the rest of me, the rest of me knew how to handle an emergency situation and be calm about it, even though inside of me I was all over the place, apparently. And so that was like a wake-up call to me, because the prosecutor, I think they were prosecutors, I don't know, I'm just speculating, I don't remember, but they're trying to build something from this. That's why I say, I'll finish this. Well, so they're attempting to build a case, and so with people that are doing things properly, they have to have evidence of stuff. They can't go by what my emotions were or my feelings. Okay, and so when I was being interviewed the first time about when this incident happened and what I remember based on blah blah blah, my emotions were doing all the talking. In other words, my ego had stepped in and it was just making stuff up. I'm being really honest, and not making stuff up intentionally to hide. And it was just my thoughts were going all over the place and making up realities that were not actually even happening. Okay, and I can remember too, because I'm a visual person, right? So I can remember looking over at people, and I think I was picking up their expressions as they were trying to tell me stuff. And so maybe there was some panic in their eyes that I saw. They were actually speaking appropriately to me. They weren't yelling at all. Okay, so that's why it's so important to manage your thoughts. That way you can control your feelings and emotions and make sure you are not delusional and hallucinating and making stuff up. That's what a lot of witnesses do. That's what informants do. They're not grounded in reality. They have another ulterior motive. So they're making up and hallucinating in their minds, and not in their minds, in their thoughts about what's actually taking place. Okay, so in other words, if it wasn't for them audioing everything, recording everything that I was saying and doing, during all my job during that time, they would think that there was just, all this massive confusion going on in the background. But the recording of it, which is evidence, was anything but that. I was very calm, and there was no panic in my voice. Even though I felt as though it was, because I knew how important it was to manage myself appropriately during these times, when we have this code red kind of thing. So my point is, my thoughts were inadequate and were falsely based on my feelings and emotions, and not necessarily on the actual event itself. Because I can remember the event clearly, because like I said, I have visuals of it. I remember, the people that were involved in the incident. But for some reason, I allowed my emotions to take over and perceive stuff that wasn't actually happening. And I hope that makes sense. And that's why it's so important that we ground ourselves in our realities. We breathe. And I know during that time, as I said, when he played back the recording, he said I was calm. He didn't pick up any panic in my voice. So that's an innermost being of myself that possibly was taking over as well. Helping me get through that, because I was having other things going on in my life, personal life especially. Okay, and I knew how important it was to, do my job, the best, do my job. Just put it that way. And make sure I respond accordingly. And sometimes when we are in certain situations, intense, toxic situations, we will neglect certain parts of ourselves. And that's what I was doing. You know, to make a long story short, I was neglecting a lot of care to myself and just allowing my emotions and ego to run the show. Okay, and they were projecting inadequate information that wasn't even happening. It was happening all in my thoughts. Okay, so see how, and so what got me all prompt to say this is I saw a post earlier this morning where they had a head of a person and all of these thoughts are just going all over, you know, it's a metaphor. And so that's why it's going to be so important to grab a hold of that and make sure you are grounded, okay, by checking out your environment. Where am I? What am I doing? You know, these things have to go on when nobody knows that it is happening. You have to do this in a silent revolution, unfortunately. Okay. Our thoughts are powerful. And the thing is that our thoughts can create dramas. You know, that's why so many people are they're great at creating creations of movies, music, and this and that and the other, because, you know, they get into that space. But you have to know when to come out of it as well. And not believe your thoughts if you haven't examined them properly, discerned them properly, to know, okay, is this really going on? Or am I hallucinating? I was hallucinating that day. I was delusional that day. And this was because I was having personal issues as well going on. And see, and that's what happens to your body when you are not necessarily in alignment. It sometimes can overreact, and all of a sudden you're scared, and you're panicking, and you're having these social anxiety. You can't breathe, and it's like, okay, what's really going on? And you know, you're kind of like attempting to try to figure it out, thinking it has something to do externally. All it has to do is something internally. So you just want to be kind and gentle and say, okay, what is going on? Is this really about me that's happening right now? You can say this silently to yourself. No one has to know. And sometimes if you want to, you know, nobody's going to know there's a problem if you put your hand on in the center like this, near your heart. Nobody's going to know what's going on there. Some people hold themselves like this. Some people hold themselves like that. You know, get in the habit of holding yourself like this. And you're holding yourself. Okay, so that was like a wake-up call to me, and I was saying to myself, wow, I could have swore this was happening. And that's why you cannot rely on people necessarily giving you information if they're not grounded in their reality. They haven't resolved their issues, you know, how to manage their emotions, manage their feelings. Okay, that's where law enforcement fails all the time. And that's why so many people are innocently being held in jail, while the ones that are responsible are, you know, free as a bird. Okay, and I'm going to say this once again, and I may say it a few more times. There's this man, and everybody will figure out who he is, going around claiming that he solved the murder of Tupac Shakur. And I told you that's a fallacy. Okay, there's a reason why some assassinations remain unsolved, and they will for the rest of our lives. And possibly it'll possibly be uncovered, like everything else is being uncovered, when we all have passed away. You know, our descendants are the ones that are going to uncover a lot of things about all of these things that happen. Okay, the murder of Tupac Shakur will never be solved, because that was the whole intention. Okay, we can go around and speculate. We can go around and have theories and opinions. We can go around and believe we have evidence. And I'm telling you, your thoughts can lie to you about the reality of what actually happens just as much as someone else can. if you don't know the power of your thoughts, and if you don't understand how to discern your thoughts and how to gently teach yourself how to, uncover your own delusions and your own hallucinations and making up stuff and creating stuff that never actually happened. Okay? We're at a culmination point to where stuff is going to be uncovered. Okay? And that's because of the signs of the times. Okay? We ought to have been at a very high level of thinking in our thinking modes. But a lot of people just rather stay shallow. Okay. And it's the people that are staying shallow are the ones that have the most power over us, whether they're in politics, influencers, celebrities, law enforcement. They're the ones that have the most power over all of us. But yet they're the ones that want to stay shallow in their thinking. But there are some that were jewels, that are jewels. There's always jewels in every entity that we have interaction with. Okay, and those are the people I want to connect. I want to connect with those. They may work in politics. They may work in law enforcement. I know several people that had wake-up calls about what law enforcement is doing to people that does not look like them. Okay? Some people had experienced that with me. Okay, they realized, okay, they saw it. They knew I was being targeted. Whereas they would never be targeted, per se, by certain entities. But this person who saw what was happening to me started experiencing some of the same things. That's what's going to happen. The people that were least likely to be targeted for stuff will be. Like we had these white Americans going into another country and being detained. Okay, they probably have never been detained in their life. Pulled over, okay, and thrown in a jail in another country. Okay, but for people of color, that has been our experience since the inception. Okay, so until people experience stuff for themselves, they're not gonna. Like we just had a shooting, they call it mass shooting. Everything's mass shooting, where the people that were targeted were non-black. Okay, so all I'm saying is this: our thoughts. If you don't have a proper management of your thoughts can create a false perception of what is really going on or what happened. Your memories can be tainted. Okay. Your recollection can be tainted, because all of us have biases. All of us have agendas. Some of us want to be heroes. Okay. Some of us just do not know what it means to advocate for themselves, how to trust themselves. So you can be creating, and that's what you're doing too. You're creating realities that do not exist. Okay? So that day, I can remember going back home and kind of thinking about all of this because I felt embarrassed, actually. I was embarrassed because I put down and recorded, because I think they filmed me. I had written something down and I made it sound as though that, there was a war in the building that we were in, handling this war outside, in the city. And when they played back the audio, that was not happening at all. I was calm, and the people that were talking to me, they weren't yelling. They were just kind of talking loud to get my attention, talking loud to tell me this and tell me that. So it didn't match up. Okay, and that's how you properly discern things. But a lot of people don't have the patience for it. A lot of people don't have the patience for it because everybody's, especially now, everybody wants to be on top. Everybody wants to be the hero. Everybody wants to be recognized. Everybody wants attention. Okay, I solved the murder. And people like that will constantly, for the rest of their life, seek validation, seek attention because they they're empty inside, and they possibly have self-hatred as well. And I think that's more like that. They have self-hatred. So they need to kind of create an image of themselves based on hallucination and denial and delusional about what's really going on. And so I'm going to talk more about this too as time goes on. So the point of the matter is, if you haven't worked on how to manage your thoughts along with your ego are going to take over and create an environment for you that's going to, that can destroy you from the inside out. Okay? The power of the thoughts, the might of the thoughts, that's real. And it's all energy. It's all energy. All right, I'm going to send peace and love. And trust me, I'll be back.